Dad said, "You'll regret not having kids." I regret nothing at 45 while his grandkids drain his retirement. My dad slams the folder down on the kitchen table so hard the pens jump, and he points at me like I'm the line item that ruined his life. "There," he says, voice cracking with anger and something that sounds too close to panic. "That's what I'm talking about. You'll regret not having kids." My sister is crying into a tea towel. My brother is pacing with his phone in his hand like he's waiting for someone to rescue him. And in the middle of it all is this spreadsheet my dad printed out, his retirement account, his withdrawals, and a column labeled Grandkids Expenses that is so long it feels like it's swallowing the page. I can taste coffee on my tongue, and it suddenly makes me nauseous. I'm standing there in my own childhood kitchen, 45 years old, and it feels like I'm 14 again, being blamed for something I didn't do. He keeps talking, louder now, like volume can force reality to rearrange. "Look at you," he spits, not even looking at the numbers anymore, just looking at me. "No kids, no responsibilities, all that freedom. One day you'll wake up, and you'll have nobody, and then you'll come crawling back, and it'll be too late." My sister, Kira, whispers, "Dad, stop," but it's weak because she knows he's really yelling at the idea of being broke, not at me. My brother, Mason, says, "This is unfair," and Dad snaps, "Unfair? Unfair," and jabs at the paper again. What's unfair is paying for daycare at 65. What's unfair is cashing out my retirement to keep your kids from getting evicted. He looks at me again. And what's unfair is you sitting there smug like you're better than all of us. It was a Tuesday night, about 20 years ago, when my dad first hit me with the regret line like it was a prophecy he could guarantee. We were sitting in the living room, him in his recliner, the TV murmuring in the background, and I was home from work for dinner because I lived nearby then. I just turned 25, and at that point in life, everyone suddenly thinks they're entitled to an opinion about your uterus. Dad asked if I was dating anyone seriously. I said no. He asked if I had a plan. I said I didn't know, but I knew I didn't want kids. I said it carefully, like I was setting a glass down on a table I didn't trust. He didn't even let the silence breathe. He snorted and said, "That's what all young people say. You'll regret it. You'll see." I remember feeling my face get hot because I was still in that stage where I wanted him to approve of me. I had a decent job. I paid my bills. I wasn't out here wrecking my life. And still he talked to me like I was a child making a temporary choice about a haircut. "It's not a phase," I said. I don't want that life." He waved his hand. "You think you don't," he said, "but you don't understand yet. Kids give your life meaning." And there it was. Meaning, like life, is a container, and children are the only thing that can fill it properly. I remember staring at the family photos on the mantle, me and my siblings at various ages, smiling in stiff outfits, Dad with his arm around them. I love my siblings. I love my family. But I also knew in my bones that motherhood wasn't going to be a joyful destiny for me. It would be something I endured and resented, and then hated myself for resenting. I didn't have a dramatic reason. No trauma. No medical issue. I just knew myself. I like quiet. I like my own time. I like being able to make plans and then change them without a small person melting down in the background. I like sleeping. I liked having money. I like being able to give my energy to my work and my friends and my partner. Yes, I did eventually have a long-term partner, without feeling like I was always failing someone. But you can't say that to people like my dad without them hearing it as an insult, like you're saying their life is wrong, like your choice is a judgment. So I learned to keep it short. "I'm sure," I'd say. "I'm happy." Dad would smirk and say, "For now." Meanwhile, my siblings did the expected path like it was a conveyor belt. Kira got married at 27, had her first baby at 29, then another 2 years later. Mason waited longer, then had twins at 35 with a woman he'd been dating for a year because she really wanted to be a mom, and he didn't want to lose her. Our youngest brother, Eli, has one kid and acts like that alone makes him morally superior to everyone. Family gatherings turned into a rotating slideshow of children. Milestones, school dramas, tantrums, sports games, birthday parties. Every conversation began with, "Did you hear what the kids did?" and ended with, "You wouldn't understand." I understood plenty. I just didn't want it. For a while, my choice wasn't a big deal because Dad was still working and the grandkids were little and cute, and everyone was still romanticizing it. Dad loved being Pop. He'd buy them gifts that made Mom roll her eyes. He'd show up to school events like he was running for office. He'd tease me at dinners. Careful, you'll end up the weird aunt with 100 cats. And everyone would laugh because it was easier than challenging him. Then Mom died. That's the part one didn't anticipate when I was younger, the part no one talks about when they're busy preaching meaning. Mom was the glue, the translator, the one who softened Dad's hard edges and made him behave like a human. When she got sick, the family scrambled. I help a lot: appointments, meal prep, sorting paperwork. I did it because I loved her and because I'm competent and because when there's chaos, I don't flail, I organize. My siblings helped too, but their help was always filtered through the kids. I can't come. Daycare fell through. I can't stay long. I have to pick them up. I can't handle the hospital today. I'm exhausted. I never blamed them for having kids. I blamed them for acting like kids, gave them a free pass to be less present. After Mom passed, Dad changed in a way that made me understand how much she'd been quietly carrying. He became angrier, more impatient, more needy. He leaned on the grandkids like they were his emotional support animals. He also started spending money like grief was something you could shop your way out of. The kids deserve it, he'd say, buying them expensive gifts. It keeps them close, he'd say, offering to pay for things my siblings should have been paying for: school fees, uniforms, daycare, car repairs, rent deposits when one of them moved again. At first, it looked generous, like Dad just loved his family. But over time it became frantic, like he was buying loyalty, like if he kept handing out cash, nobody would leave him alone in that quiet house without Mom. I started noticing it around the time Dad retired. He'd worked a stable job for decades, had a decent retirement plan, not millionaire money, but enough for a modest life. He talked about traveling, about fixing up the backyard, about finally relaxing. Within a year, he was drained. It wasn't one big expense. It was 1,000 small ones. Kira's husband lost his job, and Dad covered their mortgage for just a couple months that turned into 8. Mason's twins needed speech therapy that insurance didn't fully cover, so Dad helped out. Eli wanted to start a business, and Dad invested because he didn't want to crush his dream. There were school camps, braces, unexpected medical bills, car breakdowns, babysitting emergencies that became paid babysitting emergencies because my siblings started relying on Dad as a second income without ever saying the words out loud. And Dad let them. Then, inevitably, Dad started resenting it. Not the kids themselves. He loved them, but the fact that his retirement wasn't what he'd pictured. He couldn't say no because saying no made him feel like the villain, and he was too emotionally raw to handle being the villain. So he said yes, and then got angry about it later, but instead of directing that anger at the adults taking his money, he aimed it at the easiest target: me. The one without kids. The one he could frame as selfish without consequences. The first time Dad hinted that I should help financially, it was at a barbecue. He was grilling sausages, sweating, snapping at everyone. He pulled me aside and said, "You're doing well, right?" I said, cautious, "I'm fine." He squinted at me. "You have no kids," he said, like that explained everything. "Must be nice." I felt my shoulders tense. "It is nice," I said honestly, and I regretted it instantly because his face hardened. "You know what will be nicer?" he said. "Family pulling together. Your sister's struggling." I stared at him. "Is Kira asking me for money?" Dad's jaw clenched. "She shouldn't have to ask," he snapped. "You should offer." That was the first time I realized this wasn't about grandkids. It was about a family script. Parents sacrifice, children multiply. Everyone else covers the gaps. If you step off the script, you're expected to compensate in other ways. Money, time, emotional labor. Because how dare you opt out and still have a peaceful life? I didn't give Kira money. I helped in other ways. Babysitting occasionally, giving rides, cooking meals when her family was sick. But I didn't become the family ATM. The second you start, it never ends. I've watched it happen. Help turns into expectation. Expectation turns into entitlement. Entitlement turns into resentment when you set a limit. Dad didn't like that I had limits. He started making comments at dinners. Must be nice to take trips. Must be nice to sleep in. Must be nice to have disposable income. It wasn't joking. It had teeth. And then he'd throw the regret line at me like a dart, hoping it would make me flinch. You'll regret it, he'd say. You'll see. The weird thing is, the older I got, the less that line worked. It started sounding less like wisdom and more like envy. Like he was trying to scare me into joining the same obligations that were now suffocating him. I did have a partner for a long time, Leo. We were together 10 years. We split a few years ago, amicably, because our lives were heading in different directions. There was grief there, sure, but also relief. I learned that I can handle loneliness. I learned I don't need to create a human being to guarantee I'm never alone. I have friends. I have community. I have hobbies that aren't just surviving. I have a life that fits me. Meanwhile, Dad's life became a constant drip of family emergencies. The grandkids were no longer cute toddlers. They were teenagers with attitudes and needs and expensive everything. Kira's oldest needed a laptop for school, then a new one, then braces, then driving lessons. Mason's twins joined sports, and suddenly there were fees and equipment and travel. Eli's business failed, and Dad's investment became a loss nobody talked about. Dad's retirement account started bleeding, and instead of confronting my siblings, he did what he's always done when he feels powerless. He looked for someone to blame who wouldn't fight back too hard. Which brings me back to the kitchen table, the printed spreadsheet, the folder slammed down like a verdict. Kira's kids are in the living room, loud, hungry, leaving snack wrappers on the couch. Mason's twins are arguing about a broken controller. Eli's kid is playing videos too loud. Dad is sweating, shaking, furious. And he's yelling at me about regret, while his actual regret is sitting in the numbers and the chaos and the fact that he can't say no. I take a slow breath and say, Dad, why are you showing this to me? He stares at me like I'm being deliberately stupid. Because you need to understand what family is, he says. Because you think you've got it all figured out with your fancy independence. I feel my mouth go dry. No, I say, voice steady. You're showing this to me because you want me to fix it. He scoffs. Maybe if you'd had kids, you'd understand sacrifice, he snaps. That's when something in me finally rises. Not rage, exactly, but a clear, cold boundary. Stop, I say, louder than I intend. The room quiets just a fraction. Kira looks up, mascara streaked. Mason stops pacing. Even Dad pauses because he's not used to me stopping him. I've sacrificed, I say, and my voice is shaking now, but not with weakness. More with the strain of holding back years of swallowing it. I sacrificed when Mom was sick. I sacrificed when I took time off work to handle paperwork and appointments while you all said you were too busy with the kids. I sacrifice every time I show up and get treated like I'm less because I didn't choose motherhood. Dad's nostrils flare. Don't twist this, he warns. I'm not twisting anything. I say, you're blaming me for a situation you created. You chose to fund everyone's life. You chose to say yes. You chose to drain your own retirement. Dad's face goes red. I didn't have a choice, he spits. Yes, you did, I say, and it comes out sharper because I'm tired of the helpless act. Your choice was to set boundaries. You didn't, and now you want me to become the solution so you don't have to confront your kids. Kira flinches like I slapped her. Nina, she whispers, that's not fair. I look at her. Is it not fair? I ask quietly. How much money has Dad given you in the last year? Kira's mouth opens, then closes. She looks at Dad like she wants him to rescue her. Mason mutters, this is a low blow. Dad explodes again. See? He shouts, pointing at me. This is what happens when you don't have kids. You become selfish. You don't understand what it takes. I laugh once short and ugly. I understand exactly what it takes, I say. It takes everything. And you know what? I don't want to give everything. That doesn't make me selfish. That makes me honest. Dad stares at me like he doesn't recognize me. I pick up the spreadsheet, look at the numbers, then set it back down gently. I'm not your backup retirement plan, I say. And I'm not your punching bag. Dad's eyes narrow. So, you're just going to watch me drown? He asks. And there's genuine fear there now. which is the worst part because it makes me want to soften, and I know that's how the cycle continues. I swallow hard. No, I say, I'm going to tell you the truth. The truth is you need to stop paying for everyone's life. The truth is you need to talk to a financial advisor. The truth is your kids, your adult kids, need to take responsibility for their own families. Mason scoffs. Easy for you to say. I turn to him. Yeah, I say, and my voice is calmer now because there's relief in finally speaking. It is easy for me to say because I didn't have kids I can't afford. That was the point. Kira starts crying harder. We're not asking for this, she says. You are. I say, not cruel, just direct. You might not say the words, but you accept the money. You accept Dad's sacrifices, and then you act shocked when he's broke. Dad pounds the table again. Enough, he barks. I didn't raise you to talk to your family like this. I meet his eyes. You raised me to be responsible, I say, and I am. That's why I'm not doing this. Silence hangs for a second, thick and uncomfortable. In the living room, one of the grandkids yells, "Where's the Wi-Fi password?" Like the world hasn't shifted. Dad's shoulders slump slightly, and for a moment he looks old in a way I haven't allowed myself to see. You think you're so happy, he says, quieter now but still sharp. You think you won, but one day you'll be alone. There it is, the last weapon. The fear he's used to keep me in line. I take another breath. I think about my apartment that stays clean because no one throws cereal on the floor. I think about my quiet mornings. I think about the trips I've taken. I think about the friendships I've built. I think about the way my life feels like mine. I think about the times I've been lonely and survived it. I think about the times I've been surrounded by people and still felt lonely because the people around me didn't actually see me. Then I say, evenly, Dad, I am alone sometimes. And it's fine. I'd rather be alone than trapped in resentment. His mouth tightens. You'll regret those words, he mutters. I shake my head. No, I say, and I can hear how sure I sound, which surprises even me. I regret nothing. After that night, things got messy in the way family messes always do. My mom's absence meant there was no buffer, no gentle negotiator. My dad sulked. Kira avoided me for weeks. Mason texted me that I was cold. Eli posted some vague thing online about selfish people who think they're better than parents. I ignored it. I was done defending my life to people who only respected sacrifice when it benefited them. Dad did, eventually, go to a financial advisor because his panic finally outweighed his pride. He had to downsize. He had to sell the house. He had to say no more often. And guess what? The world didn't end. My siblings adapted. Kira picked up more work. Mason cut back on expenses. Eli complained a lot, but he always complains. The grandkids survived without brand new everything. Dad didn't apologize to me. Not directly, not in a clean way. He did, however, stop using the regret line as often because it didn't land anymore. He also stopped hinting for money because I made it clear that the answer was no without a conversation about boundaries. Last month, Dad tried again at a family lunch. He watched me eat, watched me laugh with one of my nieces about a movie, watched me exist comfortably in a room full of children without wanting my own, and he said, almost under his breath, "Must be nice." I looked at him and said, "It is." He frowned. "You really don't feel anything missing?" he asked, and for the first time it sounded less like an attack and more like confusion. Like he couldn't understand a life that didn't follow the template. I shrugged. "I feel things missing sometimes," I admitted. "But not kids. Other things. Mom. Time. Peace. But kids? No." Dad stared at his plate for a long moment, and then he said, quietly, "They take more than I thought." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. But it was the closest he's come to admitting that his certainty, the prophecy he threw at me for years, wasn't universal truth. It was just his fear talking. And I wish I could say I felt triumphant. I didn't. I felt sad for him. I felt sad that he tied meaning to sacrifice so tightly that he couldn't imagine happiness without depletion. I felt sad that he let himself be drained because he equated being needed with being loved. I felt sad that he tried to weaponize loneliness against me because he couldn't face his own. But I didn't doubt myself. Not for a second. I'm 45. My life is not perfect. I've had heartbreak. I've had grief. I've had nights where the silence felt heavy. I've had mornings where I wondered if I should have chosen differently just to make family gatherings easier. But I've never once wanted a child when the house is quiet and it's just me. When Dad says, "You'll regret it," what he really means is, I can't tolerate that you made a choice I didn't. Because if my choice is valid, then his sacrifices aren't automatically noble. They're just choices too. Choices he could have made differently. His grandkids are draining his retirement. Yes. But the deeper drain is the story he bought into. That your life only matters if it empties you out for other people. I didn't buy that story. And every time he tries to hand it to me like a warning, I hand it back, calm, steady with both hands, because it isn't mine to carry.